Hey guys, welcome to Ask Jungle Scout episode number 17. Today, Kerry and I are here to answer your top FBA questions. Now, as usual, we're going to jump in with a few pre-submitted questions, and after that, we're gonna answer your questions live. So if you do have any questions, make sure to drop them in the chat box below so that we can answer them. How are you going today, Kerry?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to answer some questions. What about you?
Yeah, I'm excited. I love doing this every week. It's so fun.
Me too. Alrighty, so we'll dive straight into it, guys. And let's go to the first question here. And that one is from Costa Rican Doll that says, I am from the Caribbean, St. Lucia. Can I sell on Amazon? I do not have a US bank account. I'll let you take this one, Kerry. Can you sell from the Caribbean or really any other place outside of the US?
Yes, and that's the cool thing about Amazon. You can really sell in any market, as you know, allows. Yeah, so you can sell in the US marketplace in your account, or just setting up your payments, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, the world is your oyster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you definitely can sell from outside the US, and I'm including the Caribbean. In terms of not having a US bank account, you can get around that as well, because I started selling outside of the US as well from Australia. And so there are different solutions out there. One that's quite popular is Payoneer. And so that allows you to set up a US bank account essentially from outside of the US. And then you use that account to receive your payments. You can also pay suppliers and so forth. So Payoneer, for example, is a really great resource for people living outside the US. All right, on to the next question. And that one is from Marcello that says, I have a question for your rule of 10 clicks, no sales, turn off keywords. How about other marketplaces? I mean, Americans tend to buy much more. They are more impulsive. Okay, I sell in the Mexican marketplace, so that rule should change. I mean, don't you think that the rule should change depending on the marketplace? All right, good question. Now, what this is referring to is an episode of the $1 Million Case Study where Greg talks about how he likes to optimize PPC campaigns. And his rule of thumb is he looks for keywords where there has been 10 clicks that he's paid for, and there's been no sales even after those 10 clicks. And then from there, that's where he decides it's probably worth turning off that particular keyword because clearly people are clicking on it, he's paying for it, but getting no sales. So the question is, should we change that number depending on the marketplace? Yes, absolutely is what I'd say. Again, that's just like a rule of thumb. Really think about what the intention here is. You're wanting to detect keywords that you're spending lots of money on but getting no results. So whether it's 10 clicks or 8 clicks or 12, whatever the case may be, you can decide what metric you want to use, but 10 is just kind of a good rule of thumb. So you can look at some other marketplaces and you can adjust that number as needs be. Do you have anything else to add there, Kerry?
No, I think perfect explanation. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Alrighty, so on to the next question. And that one is from Joe Christopher. You mentioned that new orders of stock will have different costs. So you have the option to input the new costs. However, what date should we enter? If the new units arrive whilst we still have the units from the first shipment, will Jungle Scout realize that and only provide the updated costs to the new sales once all the old stock has been completed? Or do we have to manually track when the old units go out of stock and set it from that date? So we'll try and give a little bit of a picture here. To start with, this is referring to inventory manager tool within Jungle Scout, which essentially helps you manage your inventory better. Would you like to have a stab at answering this or explaining it, Kerry?
Yeah, basically, you're gonna have to go in there and change those and really calculate. That's kind of something I'm hoping we can update soon in the product. But yes, you really have to do is kind of keep track of when you think that the inventory is going to be going into effect, and then set the date point on. So I know it's a little workaround for right now, but we'll work on a fix for that. But that is a manual thing that you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, like Kerry said, like hopefully we can hopefully we can update that feature in the future so that it would do that for you, because I definitely can see how that would be super useful. But I'll try to give an example for anyone that perhaps doesn't quite understand what it is that we're talking about here. So in Inventory Manager, let's say you've got 1,000 units in stock at the moment that costs you $5 per unit, okay? That is what we're using every time you make a sale. We're taking that cost into consideration, $5 per unit, and that helps us figure out your profits. Now, if you're bringing in another shipment of 1,000 units and these only cost you $4, we want to make sure that when your first lot of stock goes out of stock, that's when the new price of $4 kicks in, so that all the profit calculations are correct. But if you're ordering in inventory now, but you still have existing inventory, Jungle Scout isn't able to determine when the old price ends and the new one begins. You have to manually select when you want the new price of $4 to kick in. And so, yeah, for that, you do need to basically make the calculations yourself and figure out when your current inventory is going to run out based off of your sales. Hopefully this makes sense. It's a little bit tricky to explain, but if anyone has any further comments regarding Inventory Manager or what we've just talked about, then feel free to ask us in the comment section. All right, and that wraps up the questions that we had pre-submitted. So we're gonna dive into the chat box now and answer your questions. So again, make sure you drop them in the chat box for us.
You've got quite a few, it looks like, so that's
Yeah, that's always good to see. Thanks for your questions, guys.
Yeah.
All right, here's a good one from Kevin that is, what is the typical ROI that you look for with a product? What percentage would you consider normal, poor, or excellent? That's a really great question. I've got some thoughts, but do you want to, what is your kind of metrics for success, Kerry?
I guess I really rated it, but if you're not profit, definitely poor. If you're not making a return on your investment there. So, but say like stay in the percent range. 20 to 30% is pretty good. So that's kind of thought, but I haven't really, I definitely always trying to get the most profit return on the investment. So if you are seeing kind of a lower return on investment, something to think, is this product too low priced? What can I do to increase the return on my investment? So yeah, I guess I have thought of it, but do you have that percentage mapped out, Lenny?
I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule, but the way I would generally go, I guess, was two numbers to look here, like profit margin and ROI. And so for ROI, I would essentially aim for 100% ROI, meaning if I'm spending $5 out of pocket to get a product, I would want to be getting at least $5 profit back, ideally. Whereas if I'm spending a higher amount, like $10 or $15 out of pocket per unit, I would probably want a higher ROI, more than that. Because if I'm spending $10 per unit, I'm basically getting a higher price product. It's a little bit more of a risk because I am spending, more money. I'd still make 100%. The minimum, I'd still want to be getting at least that $10 back. But for a higher price product, I would ideally like a little bit more. So that's kind of how I look at it. But ideally, I look for at least 100% ROI. Sometimes maybe like 80%, 80 to 100 might be okay. But that's what I would look for there. The other number I'd look at is the actual profit margin itself. And there, I generally would like at least like a 25 to 30%, or really like a 30% and higher profit margin. Yeah,
as
just like a rule of thumb. Yeah.
I was mentioning profit margin. That's all I'm thinking of. you definitely want to get the 100% back of your money of whatever you per actual product. Then you want to make more than that. So yes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I mostly focus on profit margin as well. But yeah, because the question did mention ROI, I thought I'd kind of like throw that in there. But yeah, generally I'd be talking about profit margin as well. And yeah, so I guess I would say like at least 25 to 30% is good. Anything lower than that, like even 20% or lower, is starting to get quite low. And depending on the price point of your product, at that point, you might only be looking at $2, $3, $4 profit, which just like isn't really enough to kind of help your business grow. It's just going to take a long time, for your business to grow. It's like when the profit margin or the profit amount is that low, it's going to take a long time for you to have enough additional profits to reinvest into a new product. Or if you have any sort of hiccup or bump in the road, you don't have much of a buffer if you get an unexpected expense and so forth. So I think that's probably one of the most important things when you're going to launch a product, is to make sure you've got really healthy margins. Really, I would say like 30% minimum, like maybe 25, but yeah, ideally I'd be looking for 30% or higher. So hopefully that gives you an idea of, our thoughts.
I wanted to ask you, if you haven't connected to Jungle Scout with our sales analytics tool, it's really, really helpful to see these very clearly, because we pull all the information from Amazon, and then you can manually enter in your any extra you have in there, so you have a really accurate, clear picture of your profit. Really like, because the most important thing to keep an eye on is, are you making a profit? What's your profit margin? Is it worth it putting all of this effort into only make $1 per item? So something, we always having at least an $18, but going higher is probably a good strategy if you really like fit more in general, just because you're going to get for each sale. So you're still going to be spending the same amount of on PPC. You're still going to be doing all the things. So maybe you just keep track of the profit margin. So sales, I love the dashboard. It's so easy to read. Just keep you on track of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you were cutting out a little bit there. I caught most of what you were saying, but just to recap a couple of little points where you cut out, definitely utilize the sales analytics dashboard inside of Jungle Scout, because that will do all of this calculation for you. And then, as Kerry, you were mentioning, like higher price points are better, because the higher your price point, inevitably your profit margin will be better. Alrighty, let's see what other questions we've got here. Okay, Krista says, once you're a live seller in the US and sales are going well, what in your opinion is the best marketplace to expand to? The best, easiest, logistically, and legally? That's a good question. I think always consider, it is a good thing to consider even at that point before you decide on which marketplace to kind of think about whether you should go into another marketplace or not. There are, some of the pros to it is that because these marketplaces almost act independently, it does kind of diversify your business a little bit. Like if you were to get shut down in one, you've kind of got sort of a business running in another marketplace. So from that standpoint, it's quite a good thing to do. But at the same time, then it also logistically does make things a little bit harder, managing two businesses and a whole new set of inventory and a whole new set of rules and laws and so forth, and tax and legal requirements. So it does have pros and cons to it. But putting that aside, if you have decided yep, I want to go into another marketplace, I haven't personally sold outside of the US except for Australia. I'm selling there just because I'm familiar with Australia. I'm from there and I know the marketplace, but it is quite small at this point. I'm looking at it as being kind of like an earlier adopter and hoping that that's going to mature and grow. And at that point, I'll have kind of like a solid, grounding there. But Otherwise, I'd probably say something like the UK is maybe is like a next sort of common one. I know Germany is the second largest sort of marketplace. However, you would need some help with translation and that sort of thing, so it can be a little bit trickier. But I know, speaking to various people that have gotten started in the UK as kind of their next marketplace, just in terms of like reasonably good demand, and like the demand's still fairly high. It's also English speaking, and so it's like fairly easy to transition there. You just need to understand that. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about what would that next marketplace be, Kerry?
You probably need to decide and use our extension, all the data to determine if there's even a market for your item, because maybe it's selling something that really less, but maybe in the UK it might not do as well. You really want to number first before you make whatever marketplace. But honestly, from a personal standpoint, it complicates things to be in marketplaces. So I think just focusing on the US marketplace and expanding as much as you can US marketplace will simplify things quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, if there is a huge market, say you have a product that maybe something, I think things like, for example, that are eco-friendly might be more popular in like UK and Canada. Maybe those would do better in those, but I think you just have to the numbers, see if is there demand for it? Are people searching in those markets for that product? And then you can kind of go from there. So there are other taxes and other kind of hassles to keep in mind when you're UK to the European marketplaces, and then also the language barrier. So you're going to have to hire people to help inflation and all kinds of different things. If you can stay and just keep growing it within the US, I think that will be the simplest. But again, if there's an opportunity, you can, in the I'd say, just determine the market that's going to be best for actual.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the theme here is, first really evaluate whether you should continue or like open in a new marketplace or just continue selling products in the US. I definitely wouldn't jump the gun like you were saying as well, Carrie, into kind of a new marketplace. Like one little challenge that I haven't spent too much time focusing on, the Australia portion of my business. But one little thing, there could be a solution out there for it, but one little thing that I've noted is like I'm selling in Australia, and so all my sales are in Australian dollars and so forth. All the money that I get back is in Australian dollars, but then I'm essentially needing to convert that back to US dollars to place my orders. And so I do know that I'm, essentially probably losing money in that exchange of having to always convert back to the US dollars in order to purchase more inventory. Maybe depending on what country you're in, this might work in your favor, but I don't think it's ideal. What I do like about selling in the US is that I'm paying in US dollars for my inventory, and then I get paid out in US dollars. And so it kind of streamlines it. Whereas, selling in another marketplace with a different currency, that just adds another factor there where you can't be 100% sure about your profit margins, because that will kind of fluctuate, maybe only a little bit, but it will fluctuate depending on how the exchange rate changes between whatever that currency is and US dollars. So that's kind of an example of some of the little things that do change when you're looking in another marketplace. Okay. All right, Johnny asks, is there an alternative for a credit card to register as a seller in Europe? I couldn't get a credit card. Personally, I'm not sure offhand. I know I got started with just a debit card, and that was always fine. But then randomly, every now and then, I would, Amazon would suddenly send me a message and say that they're rejecting that card, and I'd have to keep adding it, or I would keep adding multiple debit cards backwards and forwards. They keep rejecting it, and then it would work suddenly, and then it would be fine. So I do know that I think they are quite or more strict on it now about having an actual credit card versus, you know, a debit or something else. But I don't know of any alternatives offhand. To be honest, I'm not really familiar with that process or any best practices when it comes to registering. So fortunately, I can't help in that area. I don't know if you know anything, Carrie.
No, unfortunately, don't. But I'm thinking of some more international types of cards, like maybe Chase, or things that you maybe look into. I wish I had an answer for this one, but I don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's probably like what you said, Carrie. Just maybe like might have to like kind of shop around to see what other cards and so forth are available. I mentioned earlier, if you don't have a US bank account, that you can access one through something like Payoneer. I know they give you a debit MasterCard for use with those funds, and I've used that card on my account for a long time, and that has worked. So you could try that. I know they say you need a credit card, but from my experience, that's not strictly true. So I'd maybe try different cards and kind of keep trying with that.
Another option too is to drop that question in the FBA group, our competitive edge group, because there are a lot of selling in Europe. I'm sure they'll give you an that. So definitely a question in there, and you'll get the solution.
Good idea. All right. Let's see. Preston says, after launching first product successfully, if we have the money, should we launch 2 new products, or should we stick with launching 1 product at a time? Personally, I'd just launch 1 product at a time. Purely from past experiences where I did try to launch 2 products at once, and I sort of messed it up, and then essentially I ran out of inventory on my first product, and I had like a lot of partial launches and everything I didn't have enough money to support everything. And so that could have just been me and bad money management and so forth, but I found it quite challenging to launch more than 1 product at once. So personally, I would just stick with 1 at a time. That being said, I do know that there are people out there that are launching multiple products at once. I guess it kind of comes down to, you know, your strategy and how you're going about doing it. But yeah, personally, I would just do 1. What about you, Carrie?
Yeah, it definitely depends on how much cash flow that you have, because that, you know, sure that your items are in stock is probably one of the most challenging things when you're starting on Amazon. So having that ability to restock and then grow your first product, you need to have that capital to do that. And then, you know, you definitely can do a second product. We have multiple products, but again, it was all right at the time, and it was very gradual, and you have to kind of calculate it. But people with unlimited cash flow, I think, yeah, why not? You know, if you've got the first product belt, you understand the process, you can launch another product as well. But again, when you're funding flow, keep your products in stock. Don't let them go out of inventory. It's just a really bad thing all around to do that. So just make sure that your product is growing, that you have the money to fund that, and then you can move on.
Yeah, actually, that is a good point, or kind of like the distinguishing factor is like cash flow. Because yeah, essentially in my story, that was what I messed up, was I didn't actually have the cash flow to support that many new products. But yeah, you need to make sure that you do, and I would have a surplus, because when you're launching products, even if you kind of budget for things, you might determine that you need to put more into PPC just to help this thing launch. Like it's not gaining traction as quickly as you would like, so maybe you're spending more money on PPC or on coupons or whatever the case may be. You might need to go harder or more aggressive there, and if you don't have that extra money, then you're then maybe pulling money from your existing PPC campaigns, or you're affecting your currently run products. So yeah, I'd say do it if you've definitely got the money to do so. All right. Pinarello says, is it safe to buy a UPC from eBay, or is it recommended mandatory to buy one from the GS1 website? Ultimately, I wouldn't recommend getting it from eBay. I probably, if you're serious about this as a long-term business, I'd probably bite the bullet and just get it from GS1. I do believe there are still people out there using third-party UPC barcodes and they're getting away with it and it's fine. They're not being pinged, but I sort of feel like if you're looking at this as a long-term business, it's probably not worth, it's not worth worrying about, because you don't want to always be wondering like, oh, what if today's the day that they actually do suspend me or whatever. If it does happen, it's going to be a real pain to get your listing back or like whatever else you have to deal with at that point. If you're looking at this as a long-term business that you're going to be scaling, you're going to be making, it's a full-time business, then the cost of the GS1 barcode isn't that much in comparison to what it is you could make back. So I would probably just, bite the bullet and do it that way. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Carrie.
No, I totally agree. I would feel anxiety if I bought it from a third party, and I know other people who have. They're fine. I'd prefer to be in control of the whole UPC code and do it the right way to start. So yeah.
I mean, the only other, just to give like another option, and this isn't necessarily what I'd recommend, but if you were really scrimping and you were really limited in cash and you're just trying to get this thing off the ground, but you were intending on getting brand registry very soon, or you were applying for it now, if you're willing to take the risk, you could try to get set up with a third-party UPC barcode just to get your listing up and running and to get started. But once you do get brand registry, you get that trademark brand registry, you should be able to then change it from a UPC into basically, I think you just create your own GTIN, or basically you no longer need a UPC barcode once you're brand registered for, I believe that you can change that on your existing product, and then any new products you launch shouldn't need a UPC barcode. So that is one option that you could consider if you're looking to get trademarked and brand registry. Personally, I still probably wouldn't recommend that, but that's, if you wanted to have a few different options, that's probably another thing you could consider. All right. LJ says, do you recommend shipping by sea or air, and why? Really, the easiest explanation here is air is more expensive, but it's quicker. That's why you do it, essentially, is it's quicker, generally. Sea is a lot cheaper, which is why you do that, but the downside is that it takes longer. So that's kind of like the quick way to look at it. So reasons for each is you might do air because you're wanting to get to market quicker. You want to get your product into Amazon. You're willing to pay extra in order to send it in quicker, just so you can start selling sooner and just get your product to market. So that would be a reason to use air. Or if you're running out of inventory, or it's say Q4 or something like that, where you need to get inventory in fast and you're trying to avoid running out of stock. That would be another time to use air. But generally speaking, most people will be wanting to use sea shipping as much as possible. Like maybe you might use air shipping the first order to just get it in there quicker potentially, but then the aim would be to move over to sea shipping on an ongoing basis, to be, ordering well in advance so that you've got that time buffer to get your stock in, but you're getting the benefit of a cheaper shipping. So most of the time you're probably going to want sea shipping because it's cheaper, but there might be times that you choose air because it's quicker. That being said, larger products might be quite expensive to ship by air, and you might have to just ship it by sea anyway. An example of that is our jungle slider, the keyboard sliders. I've got one here, but I can't pull it out. But with our jungle sliders, they are so big, or they are a bigger and sort of oversized item, and we only ship them by sea just because it doesn't make sense to ship them by air because they're just too big and heavy. But with smaller items, you can sort of choose, whether you want to do sea or air. But hopefully that gives you kind of like a breakdown of when you would use each. Do you have anything else that you can think of, Gary?
Nope, you covered it.
Cool. All right. Carl Wilson says, after sending out JS review requests, I noticed that the same buyers I sent the request to 24 hours later are again eligible for another JS review request. Is this supposed to happen? I guess I don't know offhand. I don't think that should be happening. I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure when they would be eligible again, or whether. Do you know, Carrie, if it's meant to only be once per customer for that order, or?
It's only supposed to hit it once, and it's usually 3 to 4 days after they order it. So, I'm just trying to see the question, but I think you should probably get into support about that. If it's not, pushing the button for you, basically.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a good call. Reach out to customer support. So that's support@junglescout.com, because maybe, it sounds like a bit of an anomaly, like that shouldn't be happening. So we can kind of check what's happening there. Maybe, maybe like you said, Carrie, the button, it's not actually processing it correctly in the first place. I think it's more likely that than it's allowing you to do it twice, because I don't think Amazon would actually allow you to do it twice. So something may not be working. Right. Cool. Rakesh says, what should be the address on the shipping label if my supplier is in India? Is it an Indian address or an address of a US port? So in my experience, the way I look at it is, if you're using a freight forwarder, or basically if you're using Amazon's kind of like reshipping services or domestic services to ship it from the US, like within the US, the final distance, let's say from a US port, if you're getting Amazon to ship it from there, then that's the address that you need to use. If you're getting your freight forwarder or whoever to send it directly to Amazon from India, then I don't know that it really matters, because I'm in that situation where I just get my inventory sent directly from China straight into Amazon. I don't use their partnered services. So in that instance, I've always just had my supplier's address there, but I don't know that it's as important, because Amazon aren't picking up the product in the US. I think maybe, I believe, like, people say that the address that you put there may impact where they send your inventory to in terms of which warehouses. So you could potentially, like, people talk about using an address there that's kind of closer to a warehouse that they're wanting to get. I'm not sure how accurate that is or not. But yeah, my understanding is that if you're sending it direct in, it's not as important what you put there. But if you're getting it picked up by Amazon, then you definitely want to put that the address of where it's being picked up. Have you dealt with this much, Carrie? Or
no, not really. Yeah, I mean, you just usually ship it to where you want to go. So I guess I'm not maybe understanding the exact question, because I know I want it shipped to Amazon. They'll give me the address, so that's what I'm putting there. So maybe I'm
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is referring to, when you're creating a shipment in Seller Central and choosing the from address, like where are you sending it from?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then it's from your supplier.
Yeah. So it'd be either from your supplier, or let's say, an example that we do here at Jungle Scout, like we use Flexport. And so what Flexport does is they ship it to their port in the US, and then we get Amazon to pick it up from there. So the address that we put is Flexport's address in the US, because that's where Amazon's going to be picking the inventory up from.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that gives you the answer you're after. Okay. Preston says, do you suggest visiting the manufacturer in China if we intend to make significant changes or improvements in the product, or a place like Yiwu where all of the manufacturers have their outlets? Kerry, is that the one that you've been mentioning to me, Yiwu?
Yiwu,
Is that
yes. I really want to go. That would be so very cool. Right,
awesome?
not right now in coronavirus, but
Yeah, yeah, in the future.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on, do you think it's necessary, or do you suggest visiting China to make improvements?
I that because I went to the Canton Fair actually a while ago, and it was extremely valuable. We not only saved money on our shipments, but also made it connect. I'm still connecting with factories for future or that we're going to launch this year. That I wasn't necessarily thinking about launching then. I just made a ton of contact. And then yeah, if you can go visit factories, you can actually see how everything's and then help make improvements to your product. It's a lot easier to communicate in because there is a language barrier too. And so it's overall, if you can do that, it's a great it's definitely a great thing to make contact, not only with manufacturers, you'll often make with other sellers too, that great advice. I can't any negative going. There's so many good bits to going over there, especially the Canton Fair. So I speak to the Canton Fair. The Yiwu is year round, but Canton Fair was definitely worth for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree that there was, I went to the Canton Fair as well a couple of years ago, and I found a lot of value in it. It gave me a much better understanding just of how things work, of the Chinese culture, getting to know some suppliers and so forth. I found a lot of valuable benefits from it as well. So if you have the chance, yeah, I too would recommend it. And being able to visit visit your manufacturer, I think there's a lot of upside to it. I couldn't say though that I think you need to if you're making significant changes or improvements to your product. I guess it depends what what you mean by significant, but absolutely, if you're there in person, it probably will make the communication go a lot smoother. But I still wouldn't say it's absolutely necessary. You can still communicate all of that via email, drawings, documents, getting on a call, on Skype and video calls and so forth. Like that can all be done completely remotely. You don't need to go there. I'm not of the opinion that you have to, but I am on the on the side of like there are a lot of benefits if you have the chance to. Because I'm just gonna assume, like, let's say you're living in the US, it's like logistically and financially, like it's a really big thing to go that far. Like it's quite expensive and takes a lot of time, etc., etc. If this is a long-term business for you, then yeah, I definitely think it's worth it. But you just need to decide when it's sort of right for your business. If you're just starting out, I probably wouldn't recommend it. You're probably better off saving that money that you would have spent there and putting that into inventory and so forth. But yeah, when money and time allows, then I think it is beneficial. But yeah, I wouldn't say you have to do that, even if you are making significant improvements to a product.
Just know that it might take a bit longer going back and forth with communication, sending sample back and forth, and than it would be if you were to go to China. Because yeah, there is that time back and forth when you're, changing the plan, changing the product. As long as you're okay with that, and then don't get frustrated with the language barrier, But I mean, yeah, it'll definitely matter if you can go there. And I know some have actually kind of developed things in China, and they spent like weeks there. If you, that's pretty awesome. But if you can't, it's not gonna. You can definitely work around it.
Yeah. Actually, I just read the question again because I was approaching it from the angle of like you've already found a manufacturer and you're just trying to communicate the changes. In which I would stick with what I mentioned in terms of like you don't necessarily need to go over there. But if you're talking about like finding a manufacturer and being able to communicate the changes to a lot of manufacturers, then like, yeah, I can definitely see the benefits of going to somewhere like Yiwu or the Canton Fair where if you can have something physical like a prototype or something to show them, yeah, definitely. If you can just like go back to back with a bunch of manufacturers and be able to literally like show them or communicate to them exactly what the changes are if it's quite like complex and the changes, like you said, significant changes, then yeah, I definitely think that will make it quicker if you're trying to communicate with a whole bunch of different suppliers in order to find one that can do and understands what you're after. So yeah, if you're finding a manufacturer, then I can see more benefit in doing it. But if you've already found a manufacturer and you just need to communicate these changes to that one manufacturer, then yeah, I think there are other ways about it as well.
Something too at those fairs is they also have raw materials. There's just different, if you need type of material that you can better find that or go there. It was challenged a specific type of fabric I was looking for, finding the fabric, but materials, factories were there, and I was able to talk to them about producing something of what I was talking about. It does connect you with those types of people as well. For the thing, but yeah, there's so many resources. I don't know about you for sure, but Canton, definitely a lot of resources that you can put there to make what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Next question is from Justin, who says, would you recommend using a launch service, i.e. JumpSend Viral Launch? And if so, which would be the best company to go with? Well, we're probably a little bit biased here, but I would probably say Jungle Scout. So for those of you that don't know, JumpSend was an app that we owned essentially, and has now actually been migrated into Jungle Scout. So it's actually it's called just Jungle Scout launch functionality within the main tool. So I would definitely recommend using Jungle Scout if you were to use launch services. And would I recommend using a launch service? I still would. So if I was like launching something tomorrow, I still would use a launch service, or I would still use our launch tools, and I would only give away a very small handful of items. Essentially, my goal is just to get as many sales happening as possible at the start. So I would use launch, but I wouldn't use it as much as I would pump more into PPC, and doing like PPC and like offering coupons, or just like dropping my price in addition to PPC. I would probably give away a very small handful in launch. I definitely wouldn't do too many, but I would do a handful in order to kind of supplement the other actions that I'm taking to get the sales up. So would I use it as a main launch strategy? No, I wouldn't do that. I think we're getting to a point where we're starting to move away from that, it seems. But at this point, it's still okay to do, but I would just be careful with it and only give away a few. Do you have a different opinion, Carrie, or what do you think?
No, I definitely, I think that it's definitely kind of one element of the whole launch process. We have in the Academy on Jungle Scout, when you log in, you can click on Academy and there's a launch section that gives you some biz. In addition to that, we have the Jungle Scout Market, which market freelancers have a lot of great launch strategies they could help you implement well. So those are resources for you if you're kind of like, if this is your time to go around those different resources to find different ways that everyone work together to launch your product successfully. There's also information in there, huge optimizing your listing when you first write it. The first month is really important. Of course, make sure you have your listing all optimized. So there's so many things that go into the launch process. I feel like people kind of think, oh, there's just one way to do it, or there's just something, but there's just all these different elements that work together. So if you think of it as kind of a machine that all these different parts that need to happen in order to successfully launch, I think that you're successful with that. So definitely this is one element of that. And so definitely, I mean, obviously Jungle Scout, we believe is serving that with. I also like buying stuff on Send, which is to get a discount on the things. So yeah, it's definitely highly recommend our services.
Yeah, I'd agree. Definitely check out Academy for the launch section and all of the modules there. That kind of breaks down all the different elements or parts of the machine, as you say, that you can do for a successful launch. All right. Roberto says, how much do you spend on PPC during a launch? Honestly, I don't have a set amount. To be honest, it kind of varies for me, but usually I would say like I would start with around about $30 per day. Sometimes I might go in there and click and make it $50 a day if I'm feeling a little bit more aggressive with it. But I would say, I generally would aim for a minimum of $30 a day. But it really depends on your budget. If you don't have that much available, you could go like $20 a day. I don't think it really matters. Although I don't know if this has any bearing, but I think when you are setting up a PPC campaign, I think Amazon has like a little tooltip that says like ads that have a budget of $30 per day tend to run through the day or something. So I'm not sure whether they're hinting that at least $30 is a good amount, but that tends to be what I start at. But yeah, again, you can start with less if you choose to do so. What do you think, Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely start with less, and when launching, you're going to want to be watching it so you're going to see, okay, am I running out of budget on this keyword sale? Am I, and I'm running out. I knew and want to continue on. You can kind of refine the PPC process way. So there isn't necessarily like a straightforward answer, but definitely when you're launching it, be monitoring your PPC, make sure that you're optimizing, and if there's something you're losing a lot of money, you don't want to continue doing that, but see that are making you money, you might want to amplify those spending too. So there's a ton of different PPC strategies. It's really complicated, but yeah, just whatever is your good budget is where you should start.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, we're talking about kind of a starting budget, but from there you're literally just kind of basing it off of performance, whether it's going well or bad. Rakesh asks, how do I pay duties at a US port if I have to? In my experience, it's either been, there are two things. It either gets handled by, I believe like your freight forwarder can like handle that for you, or if you've gone through your supplier, which is what I've done a lot, I've essentially like paid through them kind of thing, and I never have had to deal with it personally myself. Like, I haven't had to ring up anyone or deal with it myself, but yeah, that's been my experience. What about you? Have you done this before, Carrie?
We use a freight forward, so I think that people that you work with that know these types of things better than you is always good. So yeah, we don't really it's all through the freighter.
Yeah, and then if you're using like air cargo options like FedEx or whoever, I think those services, or I think a lot of those services, have the option of like dealing with customs and so forth, or paying duties and stuff. I think they can deal with that for you in most cases. So I don't think it should be something that you need to deal with personally. Yeah, I leave that to smarter people. All right. Roberto says, could you please explain what tariffs are? Well, I was going to say, like, we just released a video on that on our YouTube channel. So if you guys haven't checked it out, then head to our YouTube channel after this to kind of learn a little bit more about what tariffs are and how they affect you and how to deal with them, etc. But essentially, how to explain a tariff? It's essentially just, kind of an additional charge placed on items that are imported into the US, I guess, depending on what the... Sorry?
Taxes.
Yeah. Right, yeah. So it's an additional tax based off of what the product is, or the category that it's in. And it sort of varies between categories and different product types. Yeah, and I guess like specifically you're probably talking about the China tariffs, which has been like quite big in the news in the past few months, where, yeah, products that come from China are getting this additional tax on that. So essentially that's what the tariffs are. I don't know if that's a good explanation or not.
I'm wondering if this a list of what they are, like the percentages for each category. Yeah, it's different for each one. It's so can't really give it. I'm assuming that's kind of what they want is like tell me what the tariffs are kind of in each category or explain how that all works. But
I think it's actually quite. I think it can be quite tricky to figure out what the tariffs are in different in different categories and so forth. Like it can be a little bit hard to figure that out. I'm trying to think of a good resource offhand. I think I'm trying to remember
one too.
I'm trying to think if Gary Huang from 2020 Sourcing, I think maybe he had like a cheat sheet that had, because we interviewed him a little while back on this topic when it was still up in the air as to what was going to happen. So I think if you search our YouTube channel for that, like look up sourcing or look up China tariffs or something like that, you'll see an interview we did with Gary Huang from 2020 Sourcing a few months back, or maybe like 6 months ago now. But I believe in that there's a link that we shared, a resource that he had, which I think actually kind of breaks down what the tariffs are, or at least the ranges, and a little bit more information about it. All right. So Andrew is asking, is this 25 to 30% profit margin after FBA fees or before? So that's after. So that's taking into consideration all of your expenses. You're wanting at least 25 to 30% profit margins. If you're talking before that, essentially like the FBA fees would more or less chew up that entire margin anyway. So yeah, because that's generally, I get 30% from like roughly a third. So the way I think about it in very, very simple terms is it's like, I kind of want to spend like a third on getting the product, then you'll probably spend about a third on the FBA fees, leaving you kind of want like a third or so in profit. That's like a very, very like basic level to look at it, but that's kind of how I see it. So yeah, definitely after fees.
An average fees are going to be about 25%.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's important to make a profit. I think that's where a lot of people forget to really calculate and understand what's in their business, which is why sales analytics is so helpful. A lot of people don't really know their true profits, and it's hard to see in Amazon. So having a board is really helpful to see it.
Yeah.
I know.
Definitely. All right. Roberto says, is this Amazon FBA business your main source of income? Or do you have a job and is this your side hustle? Well, I guess you're probably in the same situation as me, Kerry. But we also both work at Jungle Scout as well. Essentially my Amazon business personally is mostly kind of like a side hustle. I run that on the side, as well as I kind of have like a couple of little side hustles. But yeah, essentially that's what it is for me. I don't know what your situation is, Kerry.
Yeah, some side hustles. But yeah, the FBA I run with my dad actually. So he's working on it full time. I work on it part time, and pretty much been reinvesting of our profits to grow it. So that's kind of a cool stress, because if you do have a job, then you can work on, spend all the money that you get in your FBA business back into it to really get it. So that's kind of strategy we're using right now. We've been doing it for almost 4 years. It's crazy because I'd be years for like, wait, it's been 2015, so it's been a while. So it's definitely a very good business though, and I know people who definitely full-time on, and it's doable. I love all things Amazon. I love Jungle Scout, so I'm kind of living the life doing both.
Epic. Yeah, I'd agree with everything you said. I think if you're trying to think of like what value I can give here, but yeah, I'd agree with what you said, Kerry. Like if you're someone that's thinking about like maybe you're working a full-time job and maybe you want this to be your full-time job, but it's currently just a side hustle, I would say like honestly, keep your full-time job or your day job, whatever you call it, because that does then give you the freedom to reinvest everything back into your business. And I would do that as long as possible. Yes, it is kind of harder to like work full-time and then kind of have a side hustle on top. It is harder, but the longer you can do that before kind of like leaving your full-time job and so forth, yeah, the more you can reinvest into your business and the bigger you can make it. So yeah, that's probably like one bit of advice or so forth I can give here is to, yeah, try to like hold off from leaving your day job as long as possible.
Yeah, I think that I'm just going to be like rich right away. And yes, you can, live off of what you get from the business, but ultimately grow and really have a lot more income from that stream. And it just takes time to build that. So it's necessarily like, I make this much profit this month and I'm going to use my whole income. That's not the right way to think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Investing, basically.
Yeah, that is definitely an important note. You do need to do that for a long time. Like as a very broad rule of thumb, I'd recommend at least a year. But of course, it depends on how much profit you are actually making. But yeah, that's a good point. All right, guys, we're coming up on the hour, so we're going to answer 2 more questions today. But also a quick note, if you guys are enjoying this episode and finding value in our answers, make sure to give us a thumbs up below because that tells us that you're enjoying these episodes and that's what makes us keep coming back to help you guys out. So we're going to do 2 more questions for today. The next one, let's see. Next one's from Banana Bob, who says, thank you both for always providing such great information. Can you talk a little bit about the depth of the supplier database information on suppliers, meaning how reliable is it to find good suppliers? That's a good question. So I would say it's very reliable to find good suppliers. Because when you're going off of, let's say like Alibaba or whatever, like a lot of the information on that platform specifically, a lot of it is kind of like inputted by the user themselves. They're sort of like putting in all this information. They might be saying like, we sell 20 million in the US or we do this and that. But a lot of that, and of course they're all gonna say that they have high quality products. And it's not to say that this information isn't true. And I know Alibaba are doing like a good job of verifying more and more information by getting third parties to do so. But ultimately, really like the best way that you can verify a supplier is, or that we've found, is by finding products that they are selling or finding their product that's being sold on Amazon and reading the reviews. And so that's exactly what the supplier database can help you do. You can take a listing from Amazon, put it into supplier database. It can tell you the supplier that particular company is using. And then if you can find that supplier, then, and that listing is getting really good reviews, then that gives you the feedback that, okay, this supplier makes a good product. And that's, getting reviews on the actual product itself is really like, it's probably like the best way to evaluate a supplier or the quality of their goods. You're not just going off of what they say on their profile. You're not even just going off of a sample that they might send you, because of course they're gonna send you the best possible sample. But you don't, by seeing reviews on Amazon for that product, that that they're making, you can see that they consistently make good products on a consistent basis. So that's why I think the supplier database is really good. You're not always going to be able to find suppliers for ASINs that you put in. Because remember, we get this information from like US import records, so there is a lot of it in there, but you won't always find it, that information. So personally, I use I use both the Supplier Database and like Alibaba, for instance. So I do use a combination of them. But when I can find the data on Supplier Database, I really love that because, yeah, it just gives you a lot of good in-depth information there. Do you have any other thoughts on Supplier Database or why you like it, Karen?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically all the public information. When anything is imported into the U.S., all that information is public. And so we can all that and compile it into this database for all factories from China actually shipping into the U.S. And I really like to use it is similar, like a combination of Alibaba and Supplier Database. You can put in the supplier and you can see who they're what use that they're. You can also see the actual shipment. Like, for example, put in a big brand, like I put in Jansport. I use this example, and I can click on their factory. I see that factory also supplies North Face and in Vans, wow. And I can also go down and I can see that shipments the U.S. and also all the information of each. So literally, you can see like December 25th, they, did 1,000 jackets or something like that. It's all there. And so when I take a supplier from Alibaba, I copy the name into the suppliers. I can actually see what kind of business they're doing in the U.S. A lot they'll tell you, oh yeah, lots of business in the U.S. really haven't, because there are a lot of people. If you go to the a lot of kind of middlemen that aren't necessarily the fact they're kind of that go in between and try to do these deals and stuff, but maybe they're not experienced and don't know exactly what. The supplier database can help you to validate those facts. I also love it because I've found factory. If there's something I'm looking for, I've purchased a sample of that I want to start producing. I can literally take that brand name and put it in the supplier data and find them. And something to note is sometimes you need to do a search on Google and find maybe the LLC that they work under, because you have to use the exact name that they import into the US under. So sometimes have a company name and then some kind of sub brands. Make sure you use the exact name that they're importing under, but it gives you a ton of great information. I also think it helps you stay organized when you go into the supplier database. Actually, suppliers, and then you can go back and reference them, and you can edit that by photos of the samples that you adding information about the quotes. All of it is so valuable to me because when I look on all this, sometimes I'm like, did I already look at this factory? Is this the same one? I have no idea. It's so confusing. So you can kind of compile it, that organized thoughts and understanding of each factory better on our supplier tracker database. So there's just I really the base and how much easier it makes it for us. I wish Alibaba had done some kind of more due diligence so that we could see more information, but we're just literally trusting, and you don't know for sure, but the supplier database kind of validates or is good to work with. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but I recommend the supplier data for so many reasons, and I think the main one is just keeping myself organized too, because I don't know if that happened to you, Lenny, but like going through it, sometimes I'm like, this is a factory that it's on page 3. I'm looking through suppliers, and you just don't. So hopefully that answers your question, but definitely the coolest features we have. None of our competitors have it. It's awesome. I'm being super excited to be able to find competitor factories when we first thought it was like the most exciting thing ever. So if you're looking to figure out where your competitors are sourcing their products from, it's just awesome. That's how I feel about the supplier database. I really like it. I think it's an awesome.
So you like it?
I like it, yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love the supplier tracker inside of Jungle Scout. It does really help you keep things organized because, the Alibaba platform, the UI is just awful. And when you're getting like quotes and messages from people, it's very, very hard to keep track of stuff. So that's a very good reason to use it. But also, I liked your example, like, you mentioned like jackets as for an example. If you type that into Alibaba, there's like so many suppliers. So your outreach, if you're trying to find like the best one, you're probably going to be like contacting like dozens of them really, or there's just like dozens of them that you can contact. Whereas it's like you use a supplier database, it's like you find these big brands that are using these suppliers, and it's like, oh, now rather than having to contact heaps and heaps, you've got a short list of suppliers that you know produce really high quality stuff, and now like it just makes your search a lot easier. I literally had that experience a few weeks ago when I was like looking for a product, and like on Alibaba there was so many suppliers that like made this product, and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to like have to go through this process of like contacting all of them, or like, you know, which ones, how many samples am I gonna have to get to try to find like the best quality product, because the quality was very important for this particular product. But then, yeah, I was able to put some of the big brands into Supplier Database, and I managed to track down some of the suppliers for those, and now I just had like a much shorter list of like suppliers that I knew were vetted already. So yeah, it's definitely definitely worthwhile. So hopefully we've sold you on the Supplier Database at this point.
Yeah, it's so good, so good. We have great tools, and I mean, just got that one tool for what we charge a month. It's so worth it, because I saw before at it, the else selling it $400 a month or something like that, just to look at importation easily.
Yeah.
So just saying on the Supplier Database.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right, guys. So we've just been a little bit over the hour mark, so we're gonna wrap it up there for today. Thank you so much for all your questions. Really appreciate having you guys on. Hopefully you've got some value from this. If so, and you haven't already, make sure to give us a big thumbs up below. We'd really appreciate that. Also, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, or even that little bell icon so you get notified every time we go live. Yeah, thanks so much for watching today, and we will see you guys in the next installment of Ask Jungle Scout. Bye.
Bye.